what you're hearing right now is the sound from plants.
Yeah.
Well, I think I should let the producer try to explain this a little bit better. First of all, what's your name?
My name's Rue.
Rue, where are you from?
I'm from Southampton.
And how would you describe yourself?
I would describe myself as a plant music creator and an explorer of biodata.
Okay, and how long have you been a plant music creator?
So I've been going since the winter of 2018.
Right.
The kind of origin story behind that was I had no idea about plant music. I didn't know it was a thing.
Okay.
But two of my friends from back then, they saw the idea online. They thought I could do something cool with it, and then they bought me this little box here. Which is my device for a Christmas, and then let me run free with it. So
can I assume that you were making music at the point that your friends approached you with this idea?
Yeah, so I was making more traditional beats since around 2016, and then over time I've just been able to incorporate my plant music work into that.
Can I ask what type of music did you begin with at first?
Yeah, of course. So I've always been working with rappers from the beginning.
Okay.
So whenever I started in 2016, I was doing more kind of like remix work and stuff like that. And then when I went away to university, I started meeting some of my musician friends. So MC Key and MC Red Eye, they were my origins, and they're two of my close friends. So shout out to them.
Oh, nice.
And then over time, I've been able just to network with everyone else in the underground scene and build my way up.
Nice. That's really cool. Can I ask? So you said you're from Southampton?
Yeah.
Born and raised?
No, I grew up in Reading, and then I moved away to Southampton for university, and I've stayed there since.
Okay, that sounds really cool. Now we're going to have Rue kind of just give us an explanation of his process and how it is that he comes to produce these sounds. So, Rue, can you tell us first of all how you started on this journey?
Yeah, absolutely. So, how I started out was by running this device into a few synthesizers that I had at home, but because they were quite ancient, it meant that working through all the data that plants give out was kind of a challenge for me. And the real breakthrough moment was using interfaces such as this one to run the MIDI directly from the plants into a DAW such as Ableton, which means that I can edit the notes way faster and I can turn them into usable loops to use in beats.
From what I understand, this is the same device that would be used in a hospital to monitor someone's heart rate.
Yeah, that's correct. So these pads that you see attached to the leaves, those are the same that you would find at the hospital for reading your pulse and things like that, but it's just being used for a slightly different application here.
Right.
So here, those electrical signals are being taken from the plant, being sent into what we've got down here, and that's being converted into MIDI, which is a computer language that audio workstations such as Ableton and FL Studio can understand, and then we can turn that into sound.
So every living organism kind of releases, how would you describe it, releases energy or?
Sure. So it all comes down to electrical voltage.
Right.
So all living things produce a certain amount of electrical current, and what's being read is the change in those currents.
Right.
So the device is reading how the electrical current of a plant spikes up and down, and then is applying that information into selecting notes.
Right. Okay. And obviously right now what we're getting from the speakers is a kind of a synth sound. And can you turn this sound and make it sound like a different instrument?
Yeah, absolutely. So the plants don't really dictate the sound per se. That's kind of what I do, is the sound design stuff. But they control what notes are being played. So let me turn some of these off. So now we're taking those same signals and we're just applying it to a keyboard sound rather than the lush kind of pads that we had before. So it gives you a lot of versatility.
Oh, right, that's really interesting. You can probably see here, Rue was just kind of playing with the leaves, right? So it's kind of interesting because I guess these are all connected.
Yep.
And if you touch one part of the circuit, you're going to affect the sound that comes out. Can you kind of explain how that works?
Yeah, for sure. So the plants are living organisms. That's something that's kind of overlooked quite a bit. And it means that the plants will be reactive electrically to a variety of changes. So I'll pull this back and I'll let it go, and then we might have we might get a little bit of feedback from that. But they're responding to how I'm touching them, how I'm working with them.
So what are some of the factors that affect the type of sound that you receive?
The biggest factor that I found is the size of the plant.
Right.
So if I'm working with a tiny little pot plant, you get lots of high energy, high pitch, really blippy sounds that are flying out a mile a minute. But if you're working with something large like a tree, it takes a little bit longer for those signals to make their way around. So you get something that's a lot slower and a lot bassier.
So it's almost like a tighter space. There's not too much space for the things to flow, so that it ends up a little bit jumbled.
Yeah.
But in a bigger space, there's a little more space for an easier kind of sound.
Yeah, it's just larger. If you think about the flow of electricity, it's just got further to go.
Okay, that's interesting. You said something earlier about the time of the day.
Yeah.
How does that affect the sound?
So when the sun's out, when during the daytime, plants are busy photosynthesizing. They want to grow, they want to get to it and get stuff done. And in the nighttime, when there's less natural light, they tend to be a bit more relaxed.
Yeah.
And this reflects in the music of during the day, if I'm working out in the sun, you'll get, again, lots of high energy, high pitched stuff to work with, lots of information. But at the nighttime, it'll be a lot gentler, it'll be a lot slower, and a lot more laid back to working during the day.
You see, that kind of makes me think about human beings and our heart rates, and how during the day, depending on what we're doing, our heart rates will be slightly higher, and then at night we kind of fall asleep and it slows down. So my question is, do plants sleep?
Plants never sleep. They've always got something to do.
Right.
But in terms of their electrical output, it would appear that they're resting through the sound of the music in the evening. Yeah.
That's really interesting.
And the other biggest factor on the signals that I get is how healthy the plant is.
Okay.
So if you've got a plant that's nice, healthy and watered, it will be able just to make its own stuff independently of me.
That's right.
But if you have a really dried out, really unhealthy plant, then I've got to be touching the leaves in order to get something to come out of it. You've got to be stimulating it to a certain extent.
Right.
Because it's conserving its energy rather than growing because it's underwater.
So an unhealthy plant essentially isn't very well stimulated, and you have to draw the sound from it, whilst
exactly.
a healthy one is just emitting
I
it
can just leave
naturally.
it.
Okay. Can I ask, before you became a producer and you started producing, let's say, BIOSYNTH for plant music, what were some of your influences?
Before I started working on BIOSYNTH stuff, I've always been inspired by ambient music. My biggest inspiration is Brian Eno. He's coined as kind of the inventor of ambient music, and I love the way that he married kind of natural sounds, so like birdsong, cars passing by, with these very deep, lush pads. It creates a really immersive environment. And through my sound and through my production work, I've always wanted to marry beautiful, lush, ambient sounds with hard-hitting drums, as I think it's just a perfect mix, really.
That's really interesting. And with the music that you receive from the plants, what are some of the uses of it? Where have you sent this to other artists? Have you performed some of this music?
Absolutely. So in terms of what I do with it once I record it, I produce and release loop packs fairly regularly, about once every 2 months, and those are a collection of around 10 loops, all generated by plants, and I give those out to other producers to turn into fully fledged songs.
Right.
And I've also led a variety of workshops in the past where I've demonstrated plant music to new people and led them on courses where they can record stuff for themselves.
Okay, that's interesting. All right.
Sure. So some of my favourite artists to work with are P from Lee, from Lewisham, shout out to him. He was the first person who ever started rocking with my plant music stuff. And we've worked together to the point where we've got a song together with Novelist, and he's rapping on plant music, which is sensational.
Okay.
In terms of who I'm working with right now, I have to give a shout out to Quezzy and everyone from ESC. They've been kicking butt over the last couple of years. It's been great, and I'm overjoyed to have made an ambient interlude for Quezzy's latest album, Vows 3, which is sensational.
Okay. So, Rue, what inspired you to make this type of music?
Sure. So my main inspiration to go down this route would have been my love of ambient music growing up. So Brian Eno, Niels Fram, and Quaj Basket, they would be my 3 inspirations growing up. And I always wanted to learn how to make that type of ambient stuff myself.
Okay.
And being able to fuse the naturally gorgeous melodies of the plants with kind of ambient synthesizers and pads has what's allowed me to grow my sound. We'll do a fusion, it'll be fun. You can help me.
Okay.
So, what I want you to do is I just want you to take this pad and pop it on the back of your hand for me.
Back of my hand?
Yeah.
Yep.
Thank you very much. And then what I'd like you to do is that if you pick a leaf here and touch it for me, you'll complete the circuit.
So that's the
So
sound.
what this is now is it's a fusion of your electrical signals and the plant's as well.
Okay.
So if you take your finger away, it'll stop because the circuit's been broken. And then if you put it back and pinch again,
You get another sound.
yeah, it restarts.
Oh, right. It's quite reactive, I
Yeah,
have to say.
because you're all linked together.
So how far away can these two detectors be from each other to produce a sound?
So the distance really depends on whether or not the plants are connected in some way. So if you have a large flower bed or a planter where you have a variety of different plants growing, you can use any plant at any point within that bed because they're all connected underneath the soil, so they can communicate to each other. If you are out and about using trees and things like that, they do need to be on the same plant just so those signals are shared.
Right.
But you can send signals across great distances as long as those plants are connected in some way through the earth.
Right. Okay. Could you even like use these sounds and turn them into something like EDM or drum and bass or something that's a little more aggressive as well?
Yeah, absolutely. So what I tend to do is once I've synchronized everything all together and bounced out as a loop, the producers that I send it to can make anything they want with it.
Right.
And this has led to some quite interesting songs where we have a really beautiful instrumental married with some very hard lyrics and some hard bass and drums. And I enjoy the juxtaposition of the two genres of having something really pretty married in with something that's quite hard hitting.
What does it mean to you to connect the music making process with the kind of nature and have that feeling in the music?
Well, I love that feeling because nature's just an untapped element. So, you know, if it wasn't for this technology and having this understanding of it, I would just look at a plant as a plant and not as something that can really be applied to practical music making. What you tend to see on TikTok and social media in terms of plant music is it being viewed as somewhat of a like performance gimmick. So people are like, oh yeah, that's cool, it makes pretty music, whatever, but you can really turn it into a practical music making tool. You can take it past that step of it being something kind of just exciting into something that you can really make proper songs with, and that's what I'm really trying to push is the use of nature and plant music in practical music making.
Having said this, what would you like to see for plant music in the future?
I would love to see more people getting involved. I would never be one to gatekeep this type of thing. Just even though it's kind of my niche and it's quite a small thing at the minute, I just want to see it grow and grow and grow because it creates an awareness of nature. You know, whenever I show people the technology for the first time, there's always that moment where they're like, wow, like the plant is really doing this right now. And it makes you really reconsider how alive a plant truly is.
Absolutely.